logic-based therapy and the philosophy for children, communities for C. Um, a little bit about her. She is a philosophical consultant and P4C facilitator from India. Finished her master's in philosophical counseling and consultancy at the University of Timisoara. She's currently pursuing a PhD at the West University of Timisoara. Welcome, and when you're ready.
I'm ready. I hope I'm clearly audible. Okay, thank you for introducing me. So my topic for the paper was logic-based therapy and philosophy for children and communities 4C framework. This paper is aimed at finding the 4Cs, which are critical thinking, creative thinking, caring thinking, and collaborative thinking. That is a framework that P4C, as in philosophy for children, uses, and I wanted to try and find them in LBT, the LBT model. And to do this, I wanted to have a few consultations and then try and do a thematic analysis on those consultation transcripts to find the 4Cs as themes that appear in LBT or can be noticed in LBT. And the objective for this research was to try and understand the relationship between logic-based therapy and the 4Cs, and also to see what the nature of the 4Cs is when they appear in logic-based therapy. With P4C, the 4Cs are used as a model and framework in that practice with children, with adults, communities, and they also develop these same 4Cs as thinking skills among the group or the dialogical group in the P4C approach. And for this, they also somehow use the 4Cs as tools and skills that not just are developed in the participants in the group, but also such that the facilitator exhibits them, not just through the actions or their words or skills, but rather also in their lesson plans. And so I wanted to see how this 4Cs may appear in logic-based therapy, which is a completely different practice. It is more of individual consultations based one-on-one, rather than in P4C where it is used in group dialogues and is seen there. With the 4Cs, what I noticed was in logic-based therapy, there is a mention of using an empathetic approach and a person-centered approach when engaging with the client. Also, there is this discussion on reflective thinking and reflection in logic-based therapy, and there is also this other part where you can see this caring thinking appear there, which is more of using philosophy as an uplifting thinking, in the sense that using a philosophy which is very personal to the client that they relate to, that is in line with their own worldview and beliefs. So I saw these few things and noticed that they were very similar with what the 4Cs and P4C stood for, as thinking skills, as behaviors, or as aspects. And first, I decided to categorize these 4Cs, each individually with a set of skills and tools that acted as codes that formed the bigger themes that were each of the four types of thinking. The first one, the critical thinking, is something that the pioneer of P4C, Matthew Lipman, talks about in three different ways. The first is the application of correct criteria, which also requires having good judgment. And good judgment is something that appears a lot in the guiding virtues in logic-based therapy, and being sensitive to the context at hand, and also showcasing reflective thinking as self-corrective thinking. And The other things that count as critical thinking are questioning, examining, or expanding on ideas, weighing evidence, and also checking your own beliefs for faulty thinking and errors. Yeah. And then the second C of creative thinking. Your creative thinking is more seen in a sense of creating meanings, redefining and redeveloping meanings, making new meanings, and also as creation of plans, creation of definitions, concepts, and creative thinking appears in a two-dimensional way, with the two dimensions being the content and the context. Plus, creative thinking is also seen as imagination, interpretation, drawing out multiple possibilities, being able to imagine what the consequences would be of these possibilities if they were to be applied or to turn into real things, and giving examples, counter examples, or searching for possible evidence, sketching out how uh, some alternative possibilities could be possible in problem solving. And these are the things that we can see in the logic based therapies, the refutation step as well. Yeah, making connections using counter examples to refute the fallacies and the faulty thinking reasoning that we make. And with the caring thinking, it's more of empathetic thinking, also appreciating the group's involvement and engagement, usually in P4C. In LBT, we could see it as appreciation of the client, being more being more accepting of the client, and also it is also showing interest and listening actively and carefully and being very involved in the sessions. Further, the last C is that of collaborative thinking, which was very new to the P4C context as well. It wasn't spelled early on. Roger Sutcliffe spelled it later on, and it is seen as two-dimensional engagement of a person's internal and external world, and also a collaboration between the facilitator and the group and within the group, uh, in sense of P4C. In LBT, it could be seen as a collaboration between the client and consultant trying to work towards one goal, that is resolving the client's concern or addressing the topic that the client brought. It is also building on each other's ideas in P4C. In LBT also, that could be a possibility as we'll see further ahead. And also, it is thinking for oneself, but not by oneself, but rather with another person or more people, so that you are aware of your blind spots as well. Yeah. So, I did 3 consultations with people that were about 18 in their late 20s, early 20s, ranging from different topics such as procrastination or changes, moving, and struggling with responsibilities. And I turned these things into transcripts, these recordings into transcripts. And these transcripts were what were analyzed to see these themes appearing in them and to see how they appear and in what way they appear here. Uh, so, I will draw upon what the cases were and use quotations from them where I could find relevant relevant forces, each of these codes in them, and then note down if it was one of the C's. So, with the first person, the case was regarding having difficulties with moving back home after studying abroad, and they were struggling with these changes where they had changed completely, yet they felt like their family and their city was still the same as they left it a few years ago when they went to study abroad. And they were really struggling with being okay with the house being a mess, as they were used to living alone, having their own independence and having their own way of organizing things. They were struggling with demanding perfection of sorts with their sibling and their mother. And they also were struggling with self-esteem because their family had certain expectations that they could not fulfill, and so they started to internalize those expectations, and them not being able to fulfill it led them to question their worth, and their self-esteem went down. So I will draw out a quote that where I saw the four C's. There was this one instance where they were asked, what if they were to they could have they were to imagine what if they had to continue living with their family, which they said they weren't really enjoying, and if there were any other possibilities they saw for themselves. And they said that while living with their parents could be a possibility, it wasn't something they would enjoy as long as they did not have a job. But they sketched a few possibilities where they said that they saw three options for themselves other than this, where they could either stay at home, have a job, and work and come back home just for a few hours. And in those few hours, they would be okay living at home because they wouldn't have to face the family as much. The second option was moving cities and living somewhere else, which was their preferred option. And the third option was something they said they hadn't explored yet, but they were interested in now, looking to get married and move out of the house as well. So with this quotation, we could see that they displayed sort of critical thinking, caring thinking, collaborative thinking, as well as creative thinking. Because with creative thinking, they were able to come up with possibilities that were possible for them. They did not limit themselves to just, oh, this is it, this is my life now. No, they went ahead and they were willing to do the work and sketch out possibilities, and also were considering what the consequences would be with each possibility. And the critical thinking, we could see it when they applied a certain criteria of what is okay and what isn't okay in the living situations for them. And they were weighing the evidences of what could be okay, okay living situation for them. So that's there. With the second person, it was about procrastination regarding responsibilities. They weren't very comfortable with taking up responsibilities. They thought they could not manage responsibilities well as their friends or their colleagues who are more used to managing responsibilities, and they were very protected since childhood, so they couldn't manage responsibilities well. But the four C's then could be seen in the case where they kept saying that I can't do this, I can't do this, and we recognized them committing the fallacy of constipation throughout the session. And so they were asked if there was a situation where something they thought, oh, I can't do this, turned into, oh, I can do this. And they told me that they were very they did not look at music in a good way or did not value it well, because they thought they were someone from the science field. Science is everything, arts aren't as important in life. But at some point, they got inspired by music and decided to give it a try. They started to learn music, listen to music, get into music, and they were able to like music and change their complete perspective on music. They appreciated arts and they had respect for what they couldn't do anymore. They didn't judge people for doing arts anymore. So we could see that they changed their perspective and were able to check, reflect on their own thinking, weigh their own evidence, and move ahead. Uh, and uh, and with the third person, you could see that they were asked if there was something that did not bore them and kept their interest, because early on they said that everything they did got boring after a certain amount of time and then they left it midway. So I asked them if there was something they did not leave midway and what was the criteria where something was interesting to them and the criteria for what bored them or what they left. So they told me that philosophy and dance were two things that they were still interested in, because it was something that was introduced to them while they were child, and it was something that their family was very passionate about, and they also became passionate about it as well, and it was something that was a day to day part of their life, and so they had interest and passion in it, something from childhood and something they were passionate about. The other things they left weren't something that were introduced to them when they were a child, weren't a part of their daily life as such at home, and weren't as much of a passion or a reason for them to go ahead with. So you can see that they applied critical thinking as well, creative thinking as well, where they give me examples, counter examples, and also caring thinking as well. Also, with regards to using uplifting philosophies, the first person was someone who watched a lot of Japanese animations, and they said that as soon as I said something about uplifting philosophy, the first thing that came to their mind was this animation they watched called Haikyuu. It's about volleyball group teams, and they said that there are few quotes in Haikyuu where they say that everyone has a different path, not no two paths are similar. So we shouldn't compare ourselves with other, and our growth can be at our own pace. There was this other one where it was not uh, telling yourself that, oh, I can't do this, but rather, oh, maybe I'll try, I can do this. So those two things stuck to them very well, and they remember it helping them increase their self-esteem in a way. So these things, and so that was the case here. And with these, yeah, yeah. So with these observations during the analysis of the transcripts through what went on during the consultations, it was seen that critical thinking in logic based therapy appears as a tool of examining, questioning, and evaluation via the client, and also via the client as well. And you can see critical thinking in all 6 steps of logic based therapy, be that in the first step where you create a syllogism, you recognize the rule. So the rule in logic based therapy is equal to what criteria is in P4CA. So the criteria and making a good judgment to apply a criteria is uh, the application of rule and application of criteria are quite similar. And also sensitivity to context is very important in logic based therapy as well, very relevant, because it is recognizing limitations of possibilities and different things in different contexts, not applying something that worked for someone else here as it is just because it worked for someone else in a similar situation. It's more of taking into consideration the unique case at hand and working together with the context at hand and applying the content adaptively in a sense. And also self-corrective thinking can be seen from the clients during the LBT steps, where they realize they are making faulty thinking errors, making fallacies, and then they start refuting it. And by the time they reach the uplifting philosophy, they have some sort of corrective thinking criteria that they have already applied there and are trying to work on it, most of the clients. And also reflective thinking, not just as reflecting on our own ideas and beliefs, but rather the consultant reflecting back to the client their ideas by putting themselves in their shoes and trying to understand and clarify if the reasoning they are creating or if their understanding of the client's situation is correct. And creative thinking in logic based therapy can be seen as two-dimensional as well. Both the content and the context is very important. With the Haiku example, the client applied the content Haiku in their own personal context, in their own personal way. They were also able to empathize with the characters in the anime and understand how they could adapt what they learned from there in their own situations. They were able to see themselves in those characters. And
Aarohi, and
most,
I just want to remind you that you have about 45 minutes left for your
okay,
presentation before
thank
we
you.
move on to Q&A.
Yeah. Yeah. And making meaning is mostly redefining and redeveloping our own meanings. After realizing what faults and errors we were making, what fallacies we were making, we go ahead, use the guiding virtues that we can use to redevelop and define our meanings, our personal meanings, our definitions and concepts of things and how we do things. And refutation uses a lot of things from creative thinking, like examples, sketching and exploring possibilities, considering different perspectives, and using examples, creating the plans by using the uplifting philosophy. That could be an actual philosophy or day to day things from movies or songs that people relate to from books that they can use as their personal philosophy because it's something that they believe in and can work for them. And also, caring thinking appears a lot as the person centered approach that LBT talks about a lot, with connecting with the client that helps them trust us, and also using empathy by being present in the here and now, listening to the client well, putting yourself in their shoes, and understanding and building on their understanding to help it make clear to them where maybe they are not able to clarify it for themselves, and then they can work on it. And also care for the client's concern and topic, as well as the client's care for the whole process of going through um, using the guiding virtues and actually implementing the plan in their life and practicing it later on. Because in philosophy, practice is something that matters more than just using philosophy in academia or as concepts. So that is something that is very important, that is seen in both the four C's application in PFOC as well as LBT. And the last C of collaborative thinking is working together, thinking together towards the client's concern. The consultant has to make it their own to a bit while maintaining the distance where it doesn't get out of boundaries, and helping the client work on it, assisting the client work on it, and also the client's internal world and the external world that they were exposed to, be that policies or philosophies or the dialogues that made them question and interact the outside world with their own internal world inside the head. And that's the kind of collaboration that comes up. And in logic based therapy, all of these four things are are something that are very interconnected, just as they are in P4C. All of these four Cs are interconnected and engaged together. They don't just appear singularly, but rather as a collective in some places, two in some places, three or all four in some places, or they are very interconnected in the sense that they can't even be separated at times during certain parts. And logic-based therapy can logic-based therapy adapts these forces to its own sense of what the forces could be, and just the understanding of what the forces are and how helpful they could be to the clients as well as the consultant, as skills and tools that they can use not just during the consultations but outside in their real life to work on things, get working on things, not just as thinking skills but actually day-to-day life skills, could be very helpful. And My aim was just to understand what the relationship and the nature of the POSI was in the logic based therapy. And the next step would be actually to see how they can be adapted to logic based therapy, and if the 4Cs and other parts of P4C could be helpful to the logic based therapy consultant or during the logic based therapy process as well. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We will now open this to the Q&A. If you have a question, if you can just unmute your mic.
Oh, hello, Aarohi. I enjoyed your talk very much. I think, as we all agree, I'm sure philosophy is so important for children as well. And did you? I was wondering if you mentioned the who came up with the four C's, or was it you?
Yeah, the four C's, Matthew Lipman came up with the first two C's, and Margaret Sharp, his partner in the P4C process, came up with the caring thinking, and collaborative thinking was something that was brought up by Roger Sutcliffe very recently after those two.
Okay. I was thinking also, you mentioned that some people were resistant to the music at first, which is interesting, and I'm glad they overcame that. So then I was thinking, well, maybe you could add a fifth C, or we could write this together if you want, but curiosity. That's, I mean, philosophy begins in wonder, as the ancients say, and as we still see. So the curiosity as even the foundation, because then having that attitude of curiosity about the different methods, curiosity about critical thinking, and all of that. So that's my input there.
Actually, in P4C, with the children, curiosity is very natural because children are very curious creatures. They ask you a lot of questions. In connection with LBT, sometimes, most of the times, the clients are also very curious about the whole process and how philosophy could be practical and helpful to them, how it could be used outside of academia, because most of them think that philosophy is something that is very theoretical or just limited to academia, but once they go through the consultations, they realize it's not just theoretical, but rather very, very practical and something that can be used in your daily life. It doesn't have to be something big, small steps could be
For
very
sure.
helpful.
Definitely. I'll just add too that the 4 or 5 C's would also help with adults,
Yeah, definitely.
When they're stuck in their fallacious thinking and
Thinking, yeah. That's what I thought. I set out with the thought that they could be helpful to adults as well. They're already implicitly used in logic-based therapy, but they are not made very explicit to the clients. So making them explicit in some way, we'll have to figure it out how to use them directly, explicitly.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention that I was looking while you were reading, I was listening and looking over some of Matt Whitman's stuff, the paper that he sent me, and it's got me thinking. He wrote he didn't write directly. He told somebody else that a book that I had written. It was the first book I ever wrote. It was called Making Value Judgments, Principles of Sound Reasoning. And I got a note that said that that was one of his favorite books. And hearing you talk, I was thinking, well, drawing the similarities between, Whitman's work and my work. Logic-based therapy was in its infancy then, in the book, but it had the elements of it. It was actually before I met Albert Ellis, and he helped direct its development, but it had the elements of the critical thinking analysis and the fallacies and all that stuff in it, and so I don't think it's an accident. In other words, I mean, we agreed with his approach, and my approach were pretty resonant to begin with, and so his idea was, at this time, applied philosophy was really in its infancy, and what his idea was to take a philosophy and show its relevance to making constructive changes. And I was looking at a paper of his, which talks about, pragmatism and Peirce and, and Dewey. And essentially it was an application of, a pragmatic way of thinking, what sort of a thinking messes people up. And that's the same thing, that LBT was interested in. But he took it, in the context of children, because he thought that that's where it all begins. You have a chance to help people when they're children, and then when they get older, it gets a little harder. But as Florin has shown, that's still possible.
Possible, yeah.
And so I think that your paper sort of is spot on, because it's in showing, this comparison, because it developed, with similar ideas. And so they just, took they went their directions, but they sort of, I guess, coalesced at the end. So thanks for that. Anyway, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, I wanted to ask you regarding constipation, because you mentioned that you have faced situation when the children you were doing the consultation with faced this. Was this also coming together with feelings of frustration or irritability? Did you face such mixed feelings, and how did you handle them?
Well, firstly, I worked with someone in their 20s with the constipation. I couldn't have individual consultations with children, of course, but I had it with someone in their 20s, and it did come out of frustration for them rather than me, more so, because I was very used to clients going towards the constipation way most of the times, and not being very willing to use the willpower muscle. But this person really struggled with thinking, I can't do certain things, I can't take certain responsibilities just because I have no experience with it. They weren't ready to accept the fact that you have to get out and try first to develop some experiences, and then decide if it is something I'm good at, bad at, doesn't matter. You have to take responsibilities at a certain point in your life. They were very aware of it, but they would just push it back because they thought that, oh, I can't because I have never taken any responsibilities. So I had to ask them in indirect ways if they were a responsible brother, if they were responsible as a roommate, as they stayed with roommates, and they answered an affirmative that yes, they were responsible. They gave examples, and then we were able to see it via the refutation step with giving these examples and counter examples, that they could in fact take responsibilities even if they were scary, and they already were taking responsibilities. It wasn't I can't, but rather it was more of I can. And that's when they gave the music example as well, and then they realized that it was them who was stopping themselves. And it wasn't very frustrating for me, or I did not have mixed feelings, because this was quite recent, this client, and I had worked with more clients who had uh, been committing this fallacy most of the time. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
In terms of your, in terms of your work, what kind of groups of children do you have in mind? I ask that question because I'm beginning to see the application of LBTC to groups of kids that are at risk, particularly autistic kids. I've used it on my son for 23 years, and he's getting around really good at it. Do you see kids, or have you thought about working with kids that have these sort of unusual issues, disabilities?
Well, as of yet, I haven't really worked with autistic kids. With kids who have had ADHD, I have been around a lot, not just professionally but personally as well, and also worked with some in a school in Mumbai with ADHD. But I haven't really worked with kids who are autistic or have special needs yet. I don't think I have the right training yet, but I would be willing to try and work with those groups of kids as well.
Thank you.
Is there more time for another question, or?
Yes,
Oh.
we have 5 more minutes.
Okay, well, yeah, I know Aarohi's work, and I'm proud of what she does. Now, I was just trying to see if we can apply this to one exercise or one example. Recently, we had one of our just a public show. One of our extremist leaders was declaring that foreign and imported goods have to disappear. So he called a mob and they destroyed shops. But so that is okay. You might think that's fine, but he showed up at the meeting with the most expensive foreign clothes. He was almost like defying what he was saying. I mean, it was visible from a helicopter that he was wearing Italian, German, whatever, very expensive designer clothes. He shows up and instigates the mob to devastate, to destroy shops with imported merchandise. So if we try to, try to subject this type of this little like a little stimulus in a P4C debate. What kind of thinking do you think we should apply? I mean, I'm just trying to think here, how can we identify this hypocrisy, like thinking aloud, something like, if the leader truly believes imported goods harm the country, why is he benefiting from them? Why is he, because we know from what I was saying before, that if you are in the category of these fanatic believers, then this doesn't make any difference to them. It even strengthens their loyalty, this kind of stuff. We know. So it's happening here as well. So what kind of, let's say if you just work on the collaborative and critical thinking, what would first come to mind to try to apply in working with kids on an example like this, when someone is preaching something and straight then, not even 1 second later, straight then, he is actually displaying the contrary behavior. And the people got even more enthusiastic about destroying the shops when they saw him like this. So what's going on? How could you subject this to analysis with the kids? Would they have
I
more
was
common sense
thinking,
than these adults, of
yeah,
course. Yeah.
definitely. I was thinking more on the lines of using critical thinking first, because weighing evidence is something that is possible for kids to do as well if they are given examples. So maybe we could use stories to exemplify on what applying correct criteria looks like, and then weighing the evidence that we have at hand. And Actually, in this case, we could use the step of refutation as creative thinking as well, where they could, dissect the whole situation and find different elements of that and find examples, counter examples, apply standards, or see how the standards were double standards. Because in refutation, you do check if you apply the same standards that you do to yourself to others, or are they different for others, or how they are different in different contexts or content as well. So maybe creative thinking and critical thinking would actually be really helpful in this case, because mostly the lack of critical thinking is what's uh, using this herd mentality as a weapon. So critical thinking and creative thinking would be good things. Finding examples, weighing evidences would be really helpful. And I think kids are really good at doing that as well, more than adults even, looking at things the way they are, rather than, even if people say that kids' worlds revolves around them, they see things for things they are more than adults do. Adults have a more tinted glass of seeing the way the world works. For them, it's mostly they see how it is, if not influenced by parents or media. And during discussions, they are more open about these things and their honest thoughts, rather than think about, eventually though, not during the first few sessions, but eventually they are more open in the groups on what they think of situations honestly, rather than it being hidden behind something that their parents or the media preach to them. So critical thinking and creative thinking could be helpful in this case.
There's
Thank
a kind,
you. Oh, I'm sorry.
can I just get in something real quick?
Elliot. Yep,
Oh,
no problem.
okay.
There's a kind of narcissistic logic that can explain what Florence, in answer to Florence's question, and it's that if I think something is true, then it is. If I believe something, it is, and everybody else is wrong unless they believe what it's true. So the answer there is that typically people who hold that view will say, you're wrong. I don't, I didn't wear Italian boots. I didn't have, the imported dressing that you're claiming. And if I said so, it's true. And you shouldn't believe it otherwise you're wrong and I'm right. And so it's kind of dictatorial perspective is an epistemic dictatorship. It dictates the ontology.
I know the text you sent, which is exactly spot on, the one you published. But yeah, I wanted to see if she can apply this in discussion with kids, because
Right, and that's why I want to jump in. I don't know if you're familiar with Christoph van Rossum's work.
yes.
Yeah, because he's done quite a bit of that, discussion to sort of stave off this more fanatical or fundamentalist way of thinking. So he has good examples of the kind of discussions he had in schools with kids on exactly this topic.
Thank you for the lovely presentation, Aarohi, and this lively discussion.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, due to time, we have to move on to our next presenter.